The Emancipation Proclamation was put into play by Abraham Lincoln in 1863, January 1st. The black slaves in Texas didn't get the news until June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years later. The question was asked, why didn't the slaves from the other states come down to Texas to let us know that we had been freed? Why did it take 2.5 years? And I heard a brother answer the question very, very intelligently. It was simply that they were not free to do so. Now let's get into these words, emancipation and freedom. Because remember, Abraham Lincoln wrote what's called the Emancipation Proclamation. Why did he use that terminology, emancipation? What does the word mean? You know, there's a court proceeding where a child can be emancipated from his parents. That means that the child is on his own, makes his own decision, pays his own bills, and so on and so forth. It's called legal emancipation. But under such a court order, the child is still considered a child. All right. So when Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slave, it was never, ever a thought in his mind that the slaves would be freed, because it's not the same thing. See, emancipation comes from a Latin term, and in its root word, it's called mancipere. And the term means to be freed from their hands, but not from their control. So the Emancipation Proclamation freed us from the hands of the white slave master, but the objective was to always keep us under control. And I'm going to tell you how. Freedom is something completely different. When an individual is free, not only are they freed physically, but they're freed mentally, spiritually, holistically. So emancipation is not freedom, and freedom is not emancipation. They're not one and the same. So as a people, we should not celebrate emancipation, because again, you're still under their control. What we must celebrate is freedom, which is something that we have yet to obtain. Emancipation is something that somebody gives you. Freedom is something that you must take. Now, why were we still under their control when they emancipated us? It was very simple. It was because they gave us emancipation, but they did not give us reparations. And without reparations, we had no way to feed our families. We had no way to clothe our families. We had no way to build homes. We had no way to grow crops. We couldn't even make a decent living. So they knew that once they opened the gate and the slave took off running to go free, they knew that his separation from his slave master would be short-lived. Why? Because they didn't give us anything to go with. Nothing whatsoever. We worked for 300 plus years, from can't see morning to can't see night. And you mean to tell me you're going to turn me loose with nothing? So the slave, many of them came back to the plantation. So by the time the slaves in Texas got the word that we had been freed, many of the other slaves who knew about it 2.5 years before had already returned to their current plantations, because they would rather have a slave plate in front of them that they could depend on than to sit by the stream fishing for their food in hopes that they would catch a fish to be able to eat. It was a cruel thing to do. So now, emancipation without reparations was really like emasculation. Because when you strip a man of his ability to feed his family, then you have indeed emasculated that man. And a lot of people don't know that before Abraham Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, he met with a group of black leaders in the White House. And he looked them squarely in the eye and he told them that to be free, justified, and made equal to all mankind is the desire of every human being. But he said that not one single member of your race will ever be equal to mine, ever, whether you are freed from the plantation or not. And he told the black leaders that even if I could change it, I would not. This is what Honest Abe thought of you. So somebody who would say that to representatives from our community, do you think he would actually write up a document that was actually going to free you? No, the Emancipation Proclamation was never about freeing the slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation was about closing the wealth gap between the whites in the North and the whites in the South. Because if the whites in the South were permitted to continue to use slave labor to make profits, they could start their own country and you would not have one America, but you would have two Americas. So Abraham Lincoln's desire was to preserve the Union so that he could remain the president over both North and South. And in the process, you and I were so-called freed, but we really were not. So if you wish to celebrate, if you want to get together and barbecue and have family gatherings on the 19th of June, I say do your thing. As a matter of fact, do it every day if you want to. I am not against black people coming together in a celebratory manner and enjoying ourselves. However, we are in an age of black consciousness where we can't just tell our children everything. So stop telling your children the lie that Abraham Lincoln freed us. No, Abraham Lincoln emancipated us, which still left us under the control of the cruel slave master. And through his emancipation, we got nothing because he didn't give us reparations. But freedom is something that we still have to fight for. This is what we have to teach our children. And this is what we must be found passing on to the next generation. Emancipation without reparations is symbol without substance. We still got work to do, y'all. Peace.